Watch this. Here it is. Daniel chapter 5. It says Belshazzar, the king. Now Belshazzar, let's give you a little background. Belshazzar is Nebuchadnezzar's son. He's in that line. Nebuchadnezzar was a great king. Great king. Not in terms of goodness, but he blew it. He started getting prideful. And his kingdom started getting in trouble because of it. So much so that he was cursed to where he was out eating grass. God reduced him to eating grass out in the backyard on all fours until he had to lift up his head and say, you are God. That's how bad it was. That's how prideful he was. God brought him all the way down. Look at this. It says Belshazzar the king, and his son, his line, Nebuchadnezzar's family, made a great feast to 1,000 of his lords and drank wine before the thousands. God, I know I don't drink wine. What's the problem? Belshazzar, whilst he tasted the wine, commanded the golden and silver vessels which his father Nebuchadnezzar had taken out of the temple which was in Jerusalem, that the king and his princes and his wives and his concubines might drink therein. Then they brought the golden vessels that were taken out of the temple, and the king and the princes and his wives and his concubines drank in them. Now these are holy vessels that were dedicated in God's temple. Now of course they went in, ransacked it, and they took all the golden important vessels out of his temple and they put it in their treasury. Well, Belshazzar's having a party, he's showing off. Hey, go bring those vessels, go bring those cups and stuff that we got from God's house. And they decided to drink wine in them. Totally desecrate what was holy. Keep reading. I want y'all to listen to this because they don't tell you the whole thing in Vacation Bible School sometimes. They drank wine, and here it is, and praised the gods of gold and of silver, of brass and of iron, and wood and stone. And in the same hour came forth fingers of a man's hand and wrote against the candlestick upon the plaster of the wall of the king's palace, and the king saw the part of the hand that wrote. So imagine everybody's drinking and having fun, and all of a sudden you see this hand that's not attached to a body show up in the middle of the room and start scratching in the plaster on the wall. All you see is the man's hand. You don't see a person, you just see a hand. And imagine something being scratched into this plain wall right here.
It's time to stop.
It's time to roll.
Do you hear what I'm talking about? Well, everybody's still there because
It's time to be someplace else.
I'm not going to tell you what I was getting ready to say about our persuasion. Praise the Lord.
I
Right?
thought it was some good drink.
Yo, this is like that, son.
You know, but all of a sudden a hand out of nowhere comes and begins to scratch a message into this blank wall. Now I haven't read this particular thing since last year, so I know God said it. So it wasn't something I heard on TV or on the radio or heard somebody preaching and just came back in my sleep. I haven't read this since the last time I read this last year. So here it is. He says, then it says, the king's countenance was changed. So he was all merry and all of a sudden his face dropped and his thoughts troubled him so that the joints of his loins were loosed and his knees smote against one another. He was so scared his knees started knocking. Literally knocking his lead. That's how scared this man was. And the king cried aloud to bring the astrologers and the Chaldeans and the soothsayers. These are all the people who are supposed to be able to translate this phrase, because this was what was scratched into the wall. This right here. Whosoever shall read this writing and show me the interpretation thereof, and shall be clothed with scarlet and have a chain of gold about his neck, and shall be the third ruler in the kingdom. I'm reading quickly. Then came in all the king's wise men, but they could not read the writing, nor make known the thing to the king, the interpretation thereof. Then was King Belshazzar greatly troubled, and his countenance was changed in him, and his lords were astonied. Well, they were just amazed at how he was terrified. Now the queen, the woman, by reason of the words of the king and his lords, came to the banquet house, and the queen spake and said, O king, live forever. Let not thy thoughts be troubled in thee, nor let thy countenance be changed. So the queen comes in to comfort her husband. There is a man in thy kingdom in whom is the spirit of the holy gods. And in the days of thy father, light and understanding and wisdom, like the wisdom of the gods, was found in him, from whom the king, even your father Nebuchadnezzar, thy father, I say, thy father made master of the magicians and astrologers and Chaldeans and soothsayers. Even your father knew he was the real deal. For as much as an excellent spirit, that's a good testimony, an excellent spirit in knowledge and understanding, interpreting of dreams and showing of hard sentences and resolving of doubts, were found in the same Daniel. So she's saying, you need to call this boy Daniel, whom the king named Belteshazzar. That was Daniel's slave name. When they captured God's people and put them into bondage, they tried to take them away from their God. They took their Hebrew names and changed them and gave them all slave names. But just because somebody call you something don't mean that's what you are, right?
Mhm.
That's a whole other something, right? So they used to call Daniel Belteshazzar instead of his Hebrew name. Now let Daniel, they wind up calling that man by his name again. Let him be called, and he'll show you the interpretation. Then was Daniel brought in before the king, and the king spake and said unto Daniel, Art thou that Daniel which art of the children of captivity of Judah, whom the king thy father brought out of Jewry? I have even heard of thee. This is the king. I even heard of thee, that the spirit of the gods is in thee, and that the light and understanding and excellent wisdom is found in thee. And now the wise men, the astrologers, have been brought before me, that they should read the writing and make known the interpretation thereof, but they couldn't show the interpretation of the thing. And I have heard of thee, he said it again, that thou canst make interpretations and dissolve doubts. Now if thou canst read the writing and make known to me the interpretation thereof, thou shalt be clothed with scarlet. Still throwing his stuff around. And with a chain on his neck, and gold about your neck, and thou shalt be third in the rule. Here's Daniel. Daniel said, I'm in verse 17. Daniel says this, and answered before the king, Let thy gifts be to thyself, and thy rewards give them to another. Keep your stuff. It's Daniel. Keep your stuff. But I'm going to tell you what it means. That's what he says. Yet I will read the writing unto the king, and make known unto him the interpretation. O thou king, the most high God gave Nebuchadnezzar thy father the kingdom. He starts talking about his daddy. And majesty and glory and honor. God blessed your daddy. And for the majesty that he gave him, all the people and nations and language trembled in fear before him, whom he would slew. Whoever he wanted to kill, your father could kill him. He could do whatever he wants. And whom he would kept alive, he would do that. And whom he would set up, and whom he would put down. But here it is, in verse 20. But when his heart was lifted up, and his mind hardened in pride, he was deposed or brought down from his kingly throne, and they took his glory from him. Look what happens. He's describing his daddy to him. And he was driven from the sons of men, and his heart was made like the beasts, and his dwelling was with the wild asses. And they fed him with grass like an oxen, and his body was wet with the dew of heaven. And he stayed outside on all fours, eating grass, till he knew that the Most High God ruled the kingdom of men, not him, and that he appointed over whomever he will. And thou, his son, O Belshazzar, you haven't humbled your heart, even though you know this happened to your daddy. You know what happened to your daddy, but you ain't had sense enough to not do the same thing. But thou hast lifted up thyself against the Lord of heaven, and they have brought the vessels of the house before thee, of his house before thee, and thou and thy lords and thy wives and thy concubines have drunk wine in them. And thou hast praised the gods of silver and gods of gold and brass and iron and wood and stone, which seeth not. These images don't see, the statues can't hear, they don't know nothing. And the God in whose hand thy breath is, and whose are all thy ways, you didn't glorify him. You glorified the wrong people. Now here it is. It never said that Daniel was in there while he said all this. They had to go bring Daniel in. Daniel said everything that they were doing, and he was not in the building. He was not in the room. You praised these guys. You went and got these cups. You did all this stuff. I'm going to tell you what it says. Here it is. Then was the part of the hand sent from him. Daniel, look at this. And this was the writing that was written. And this is the writing and was written, many, many tekel upharsin. This is the interpretation of the thing. Many, God has numbered the kingdom and finished it. You're going to get it. Tekel, thou art weighed in the balance and are found wanting. Perez, the kingdom, is divided and given to the Medes and Persians. Then commanded Belshazzar, and they still, he said, just go ahead and give it to him. They still wound up clothing him with the scarlet and put the chain of gold around his neck and made him a proclamation concerning him, that he should be the third ruler in the kingdom. Verse 30 says, in that night was Belshazzar, the king of the Chaldeans, slain. He was dead by nighttime. And Darius the Mede took the kingdom, being about 62 years old, 62 years old. After praying and asking God what this whole thing meant for me, and if he told me, and he wants me to tell you, that means it's equally as important for you. It's equally as important for you.
This is just before 300.
I don't know if that word works. It's equally as important for you. There is a sin, and sometimes we get caught up on sex, drugs, and alcohol, but I'm going to show you one that sneaks into the best Christian's heart. And I'm about to give you a safety net to kind of get you out of that. Make sure you don't get caught by that same net. It is called the sin of presumption. The sin of presumption. You know what presumption is, or to presume something? This is very serious. I tell you, these last couple classes, they've been for the mature. You know what to presume or presumption means? Now look it up on your phone. I can tell you.
Belief, assumption, conjecture, supposition, presupposition,
All right.
guess, deduction, opinion.
Presumption, to presume. Keep going. What else? Somebody got something different? I wrote a whole lot of notes down. Let me
Before I
study.
pull my phone out.
Presumption, to presume. Presume.
You know what the dictionary at?
Presumption.
No, but I know there's a P in
Yeah.
Yeah, presumptive.
Act of instance of taking something to be true or adopting a particular attitude towards something.
Okay. Okay. I'm gonna put it in layman's terms, so I'm just reading all the definitions.
Arrogance, service,
Uh-huh.
We talk about this all the time. Didn't realize that-
Supposition.
assumption,
Assumption.
Because people say people are so much
Take an idea,
Yeah.
an idea that is taken to be true and often used as basis for other ideas, although it's not known for certain.
All right. Not known for certain. Let me put it in layman's terms. Presumption is taking liberties you don't have before you really given permission to do so. Taking liberties. Overly confident. It's connected to this. So it's amazing that we started with that. Taking liberties that you don't really have. People who are presumptuous are people who say, "Oh, they don't mind."
Hey!
Or if you take something that belongs to somebody else or do something, "Oh, they'll understand."
But I didn't understand
Or they get over it.
They'll get over it.
it. I'm not over it.
Oh, for me, it's all right. We don't hear about this kind of stuff. But there are people who are dead in the Bible. Not just one, but many over this. When I went and searched it, over this one sin. God took them out sometimes two at a time. You and the person you were with. Straight up. Presumption. This is what I wrote, because I wanted to make sure. Taking liberties or taking beforehand without permission. Doing something that you think you got permission to do, but you didn't ask, and you're not sure, but you don't really care. You're going to do it anyway.
That's what happened.
Somebody who's presumptuous is foolhardy. You do it thinking, "Oh, it won't happen to me." That's the mantra of every fallen girl, of every fallen young man who thinks that when there's evidence all over the world, it happens to everybody, they still think it won't happen to me. It's a sin of presumption. I wrote down somebody, when you take something for granted, acting overconfidently. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with doing that? Oh, they don't mind. If you went in your mama pocketbook and took $100, I put it back.
She was very much mine.
Your mother would
I
kill
put it back.
No, your mother would
Do
legitimately
you
kill
see
you.
what I'm saying? Taking something that belongs to somebody else, or doing something that you really don't have jurisdiction to do, but you do it thinking, "Well, I'll just say so and so," or "I'll just do so and so."
You can end up hurting feelings. You can end up jacking up relationships. You can end
Feelings
up jacking
get-
up birthdays.
Right. Feelings get hurt. What happens? Feelings are hurt. Relationships are strained.
I ain't mad at that.
It sounds so fringe, but this is very serious. Relationships are strained. Because you've been, you always do this. Or you always, after a while you do a little bit, then you do a little bit more, then you do a little bit more, you do a little bit more, and then after a while, people are upset.
Yep, you stepped over the line. You
You
habitual
step
line
over the
stepper.
line. That's what presumption is. It's when you overstep your line, you step over the line, and you really go beyond what you really have permission to do. I want y'all to start thinking about your own lives. Think about, what am I doing where I just figure, oh, they'll be all right. Or she'll be okay. Or God won't mind. He knows my heart. That's presumption. God knows my heart is the ultimate presumption. God knows me. Don't judge me. Only God can judge me.
Tupac.
I just said that outside the house.
you see what I'm saying? That is what it's all about. God is saying, no, I do know
That
you.
gets into my skin.
I absolutely know you.
Maybe
Yep.
this is what I need to say.
That's why I set boundaries, because I know you. And when we overstep those boundaries, and I'm telling you this, thank you, Holy Ghost, this is for you tonight, because right now, if you haven't done so already, every relationship you have should have some type of boundaries. Every friendship you have should have some type of boundaries. When you should have boundaries at this point. When you little, you bump your head and you realize, I can't touch that. That's a boundary. You know what I'm saying? It's hot. Ow! You stick your hand in the fan when it gets in up a couple times. You see what I'm saying? You just set a boundary.
Yep.
Don't, note to self, don't put my hand in that fan anymore. You take a hair clamp, what y'all call it, bobby pin. You take a bobby pin and you stick it in the electric socket. You get a little smoke. You just set a boundary. If you smart, you see what I'm saying? If you set a boundary, that your mind, if you smart, something in you says, okay, note to self, yeah, I'm not gonna do that anymore.
I wish I had pictures of that.
You see what I'm saying? So tonight, it's really about you making sure you stay within the boundaries that God has given you, and to make sure you have boundaries for everybody in your life. Because at this point, people are coming in and out, and you have to figure out who's here to stay, who's here for a season, or who's here for a reason. Why are you here, and how long are you gonna be here? Straight up. And you have to make sure that you have those boundaries set for others, and that you are living within the boundaries that God has given you. If you have anything in your life that's undefined, that's dangerous. That's dangerous. You don't have any set standards for how you living. That's dangerous. That's very, very dangerous. And you are on the edge of sin, because then if you don't have any boundaries, you overstepping something you don't even know you overstep. You say, oh, it'll be all right. Oh, I can do that. I'll just do it one more time. And that's what happens. That's what happens. So let's go on. So what kind of feelings come about when you overstep somebody's line, or when somebody steps over your line? What happens? How do you feel? Tell me about the emotions that come with overstepping boundaries.
You feel used.
Girl. Okay. Feelings? F-E-E-L. You feel used? What else?
Feel disrespected.
Disrespected. That's the biggest one. What else? Those are the two big ones. You feel used, you feel disrespected, or somebody feels used, or somebody else feels disrespected, because we're not always the victims. Sometimes we are the perpetrators.
Ashamed.
Sometimes we are the culprits. Say it again.
Ashamed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Huh?
Guilty.
Oh, yeah. Ashamed, guilty.
Violated.
Violated.
How do you feel when somebody oversteps your
Let's
boundary?
go.
Oh, my good.
Yes. Violation. If you violate the speed limit, what happens?
Ticket.
You get a ticket.
And
That little camera take a picture of you.
What? Why are you bringing them to me? Who teaching? Thank you, son. Hey, son. Hallelujah. Praise hallelujah. Together. All right. Anyway,
Too big to be sleeping in church.
definitely. And what happens when people find out you overstepped the line? What are they gonna do with you? Or what are you gonna do with them if they've overstepped your boundary?
You draw them a smaller boundary.
Keep them out of this.
Immediately.
Don't cross this line.
Yeah.
I need 50
my
feet.
front.
For example,
That line.
here's Shannon. Shannon's a beautiful girl. Man off the street comes up and puts his hand down her shirt.
That deserves a slap, a kick, a punch, and all
How
that.
about
Oh!
violence?
It depends. So do you see how if you got my bank account number and you took out $50, I'm gonna be upset. I'm gonna change everything. But it was only $50. But if I assault your person, and I decide I'm gonna put my hand straight down your shirt because I feel like it, or I'm gonna just go up to you and just goose your butt and I feel like it, straight up.
That's the sexual harassment.
Yeah, and we going to court.
Yep. The level of
And the
place called court.
consequence, where it was just $50 over here, now I'm getting you for
locked
pain,
up.
suffering, emotion. Who you work for? I'm gonna get them. I'm gonna get everybody. Do you see what I'm saying? Because there was a violation.
You're gonna lose your job at least.
Let's start here. Let's start with this guy, Belshazzar. What was his violation?
Going inside the house of God, getting a little goat.
Boom. He went. He got something that belonged to God.
He robbed God.
So it's